And initiating emissions, and we are live. Let's get the party started, Dee.
Okay.
Hello, planet Earth, and welcome to Lilia's almost weekly Wednesdays. And thank you again for joining us. I'm Lilia, my pronouns are she and hers, and these live streams are a way to highlight some of the very special people in the world who are doing amazing things. Like D M Maynard here.
Okay.
Oh, let me just put that on. Planet Earth, and welcome to Lilia's. Sorry, my phone. There we go. Okay, so
that's what makes it live.
Yes. So we have some amazing people like D M Maynard here today who are bringing information about gender identity, etc., for their allies and people like you, our viewers. So I'm very honored to have her today. Author and educator, Dee. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. It's really great. So Dee, you're in New York. What time is it there?
At this moment. Yes, I am right now. And I want to thank you and the Facialteam for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. I'd just like to say Dee and I have had a relationship for some time now, and she's created a guest blog on the Facialteam website, which was published earlier this year, and I'll share the link in the comments to that, so if anybody's interested. And today we are going to be talking about some of the books that Dee has put together for parents, partners, and educators of people who are transitioning. So, but first, Dee, can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you've been up to?
About me? You want me to? Okay. Well, you're correct. I am an educator first and foremost. I taught in the classroom for more than 30 years. It's the greatest job in the whole world. I can't even tell you. I miss my students every day. I taught early childhood and lots of other things in between and after and throughout. I retired from that because I had this opportunity to write books to help the trans community, which has also been a next, I call chapter 2 in my life. I love Mahjong, in case that matters, and the beach, walking on the beach. And so that's where I present internationally. I run workshops for parents, partners, families, educators to help them lift the voices and embrace people in the TGNB students, children, partners, and every umbrella term that goes along with that.
Thank you, Dee. Welcome again. It's a pleasure to have someone with such a rich history of knowledge and education and experience in this field. So your last book launched in August, is that right?
Yes.
And you had another one that just launched more recently, correct?
Yes.
You've been busy.
I know. The next one will be in January, actually. The third one will come out in January of the series.
Wow. Yeah. And that one is for educators, if I'm correct?
Yes, teachers, support staff, administrators, anybody who's connected to schools.
Fantastic. So as I said before, today's topic is for partners, parents, and other family members, but also, as we're saying now, for educators, administrators, anyone who is going through their own parallel journey while their loved one or the person that they work with is in the process of exploring their gender identity and expression, as well as how we can better support TGNB people and gender questioning people in an educational setting. So let's begin with the first topic, Dee. What are the names of the books? I know you have them there with you, some of them. And so if you want to go through and let us know what the titles are and explain a little bit more about who they're for.
Okay, so the first book that came out last January of 2019 is called The Reflective Workbook for Partners of Transgender People. Your transition as your partner transitions. It's for, I don't know if you can see that, but.
Yeah, I see it. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, feels. I'm still getting used to all this. And so it's for partners who are navigating the transition for themselves. The whole goal of all of the workbooks is to understand that the person who's in transition or questioning their gender, that they need support, but so do the people that love them, care for them, and educate them, and to help them with their journey, but also focus on their own needs and wants. So it does it regardless of where the relationship is for partners. How long you've been with the relationship, the book can help with that. It doesn't matter how long your partner has been in transition, your relationship structure. And so those are the main purposes of the book, and also to help a partner navigate whether they where they are, if they feel they could stay in the relationship once they find out their partner may or is going to be transitioning, whether they need to remain friends. There's all different configurations. Maybe they need to be there for part, or whether they're not going to remain. And so it really gives them a place to, a private place to reflect at their own pace, to allow them to understand their own journey. And then once they understand themselves, it's easier to be there for somebody else. So then the second book that came out this August.
I'll say one thing, Dee, about this book.
Sure.
We've spoken about your books a lot and about what's behind, all the work that went into them and behind them. And I just think that it's amazing because, and to point out to our viewers that a lot of the resources online and offline are all about the person who is transitioning, the individual who's exploring their own gender identity. But the transition is also, it's involving their support network, which includes parents and partners, etc. So this is such an important resource for those people, because there really are there's very little information out there for the people who are trying to undergo their own experience and at the same time, parallel.
Exactly. That is the point of all these books, is that when researching, I really discovered that when my partner was exploring their gender, I was looking for resources, and I found resources that talked about what it was like to how to support the partner in transition, or sometimes I saw things for how to help the child that's in transition, or maybe the student, but there was never an opportunity that focused on the actual person that would be in the relationship or be connected to someone and help them discover that journey. So when parents ask me that, I created this book, which is called The Reflective Workbook for Parents and Families of Transgender and Non-Binary Children, Your Transition as Your Child Transitions. And I feel like the difference between the two books more is that, as I mentioned in the, well, first of all, a child of any age can maybe exploring their gender and trying to understand certain aspects of themselves, all the way from any age range. And then you're always someone's child. So you can be 80 and still be exploring your gender identity and your gender expression and exploring your gender as a whole. So I feel like the difference between those two books, which they have a lot of similarities, more than as I did my research and interviewed and did things like that, I have to say there was a lot of commonality. But one of the differences I would say is that with partners, a person, an adult, can decide whether they're going to remain or not, whether they, what path they're going to take, alongside or not alongside. But I really feel strongly about this, and this is my personal bias, and I know everybody will not agree, and that's okay. Is that a child really needs the support, whether it comes from a parent or the parent knows, or family member knows, that they cannot themselves be supportive of their child's journey with this, to never leave that child alone, because that would be the most awful thought in my being a teacher first and foremost. That is totally heartbreaking to me. And that to understand that there are ways to support someone even when you don't completely understand something, and to never leave that child, never leave them without somebody to give them support. So that's the two little nuances. But that does not mean that a parent, family member, sometimes grandparents are very supportive and able to help and guide and support a child. That during these times, it's very important that people understand that their child is exploring themselves and in a place that they may not even understand. They might not have the words to express. It may just be a feeling, and that can also go for partners, and that can also go for students. That some of the work that I've researched and went to different places, taught me that, as well as listening to people in transition. They may not have the words, but it's a feeling, and it needs to be respected, as well as the feelings and thoughts of those that are in the person's life.
So you've had workshops, lots of different workshops with parents and their children, and the information that you learned from these workshops has helped you to put together this workbook. So you did the workshops, now we've got the workbook. So it's sort of, it put together all the things that, the tools that you're providing in your workshops, and now they're in book form, right?
Right, yes, exactly. And so that's when people at school knew when I was teaching, and then even friends that I happen to also have as teachers would say to me, ask me questions about students in their class that they weren't sure, and I wasn't sure, and only a person knows for themselves how they will identify. That while they were exploring and learning more about their own gender exploration, how to support them in the classroom. What do they do? And so I thought that it would be a great way for some teachers, things will be very new to them. It may not be a person in their family, so they might not have the experience. And so their only exposure to a person who may be exploring this for themselves might be a student in their class. It could be a colleague, it could be an administrator, it could be anyone. People won't always know that this is going through someone's mind or head, or that they're exploring in their heart who they truly are. And so this book for educators really gives the place for teachers and a person to have a safe space to explore their own thoughts and feelings. And there's different aspects of the books. And when I was presenting at these conferences that you were talking about, people were asking me, where did I get the questions that I was posing in the workshops? And where was I getting the activities? And I would say, oh, I created them as a teacher. This is the way I would teach somebody. So I just transferred those skills to this. And they were like, you have to write this down. You have to write this down. And then the partners, I did that first. And then parents would sometimes, when I would do book signings, stop by, take a look and say, oh, could you do one of these for parents? And that's how that happened. And then my friends that came to my book signings instead, can you consider this for teachers? And I thought, oh, okay. And my publisher was wonderful, JKP. And they embraced these ideas. And I did it as a workbook because as a teacher, I found that I could address more modalities that way.
Absolutely. It's very practical. It's not just this, thick volume that you've got to read through. They're very interactive, aren't they? Yes. They're like, it's like a school book where you've got to, fill in the gaps and make little lists and brainstorm.
You just don't get graded on it though. You never get graded on it. And that you can change your mind, and you can revisit certain things, because how you feel and what you think at one moment can evolve and change and shift. And that I find that it's important for those that love someone who's in transition to give themselves that space of the unknown. It's a very uncomfortable place. The unknowns is, and the questions so there's different, to make sure that every learning style is explored in this, right? I created it, the books that would cover all different topics and aspects. Now, besides the actual workshops, I did interviews, one-to-one interviews with parents and one-to-one interviews with partners and teachers to get their feedback and keep their anonymity. And if there is a part in the book called sampler shares, everyone's anonymity is kept. You would not know who they are. And I was very clear about that because I wanted honest voices. And that's just one aspect of the workbooks. They have many parts to them.
Oh, they sound amazing. And what's occurring to me right now, Dee, is that it's really unlimited, the transversality of these workbooks, because I'm thinking, I want to do one, and for health workers, right?
Exactly. And so, yes, so that's what we're doing now. We're using, because the titles are so the one for teachers, it's the reflective workbook for teachers and educators of trans, there's so a lot of them, of trans and non-binary students, your school's transition as your students transition. And that we're going to be opening these workshops to other areas also, that different types of transitions, different than a gender transition. But a major part is that when it says, the second book that says, for parents and families, people can have families of choice or friends, because sometimes people, their family members, for whatever reason, are not able to be supportive or be there with them during that journey. And so those parents, those people in their life can be, they can be as parents, so they could be like other family members, and they may be the most supportive people in a person's life. So as you were saying, you would want to expand it to health workers and things like that. There's lots of sections actually in these books for people in the mental health field. There's sections about therapists, finding a therapist, how school psychologists can help, and school social workers, how going to therapy, and that self-help part that you and I talk about other parts of this. But the book is broken into different sections. So all the books are broken into, they have, to address all the different ways people learn. And some people, they don't want to write in a narrative form when they end up responding. I always say, go to a cozy place in your house, in your home, or maybe an outdoor place, and just have like your own private diary. It's in a journal form, but it's also in a workbook. So it's like a combo of those three things. That was my major goal. I wanted it to be user-friendly, something you can use for a while, put it down, because that's part of processing. And so the different aspects I have, anecdotal affirmations, where they're almost like models or slogans that are in prose, but a little poetic at the same time. And one of them is a transition, a bridge from what was to what should have been. And they're all different ways that people can just reflect on a slogan. So it could just be a short response. It's something you could discuss with someone. You could discuss it with your therapist, a spiritual mentor, a friend, the person in transition, but then you don't have to share it with anyone. Everything is up to the user and how they want to do it. There are, I mentioned sampler shares, which are people who have answered some of the questions, which the questions in the book are called reflective responses, because I love alliteration, so everything's alliteration. And so there are questions in the book, but then some partners were so courageous, and some parents, some family members, like grandparents, and then I myself as a teacher answered some of the questions myself. That's the only time I answered the questions, and provide that space. And then there's games games galore and graphics galore. So I use all different kinds of graphic organizers so that people could just jot down answers. They don't have to be full sentences, and that you have a question for me, go right ahead. Just raise your hand. It feels just like a classroom.
It sounds fantastic because like, where do you start, and with a diary, not everybody has the practice of keeping a journal. So this sounds great because it's like something that can prompt you to keep going, to keep processing and learning about yourself, and you're recognizing your feelings and growing also along the way. And maybe also helping people put their feelings into words, which is important in order to communicate their feelings later on with each other, right? So I just wanted to say we have some comments here in
Okay.
live. So yeah, Sophie and Denise, they said Denise is the partner of a trans woman, and she said that the reflective workbook for partners was an integral part of her journey and allowed her to express and process her feelings, which is basically what I just said, right? And Jerry here said she's been supporting partners and families at PFLAG meetings, but having more supportive materials has been a big help. A lot of family members stay in the closet as well.
Yes.
That's a very good point.
Yes, Jerry's very wise.
Yeah, and she says the information for teachers and health workers is critical. So yes, next stop, health workers. Sugar Free saying such important work, and she expresses her gratitude for your work. And again here, the workbook format is so incredibly helpful. This person's copy has been written over, thoughts have been added as time has passed. The samplers and vignettes have made this person feel far less alone. So that's a good one too.
That's my goal. The vignettes, I was they're called Vital Vignettes, and I'm so happy that that's what that person feels, because that was my goal to, when people shared with me in workshops or interviews, I wanted to share all aspects, because there is no path that's the same for anyone, whether you're the person who's in transition or you're a person who's in the life of a person who's transitioning. And everybody gets there. In education, they call it movement education. The end goal is the same, but the way you get there. I had a very wonderful administrator who used to say it's in the process, not the product. The product matters, but it's the process of getting there. And so the vital vignettes are where the information comes, and that is like probably the second part in the book, and in each book and in each chapter has this. So all the components I say appears in every single one of the chapters. The first chapter pretty much explains the book and the setup. So and then and what you were talking about when you don't know where to start, in teacher land we call that sentence starters, and it actually gives you the opening sentences to how to start. And also there are scripts or ways to help you open the conversation with someone else. Insurance workers, when you have to call for insurance, there's a whole section about that, on how actually gives you a script, because I have a background in theater, so sometimes you need to have that script and you're not sure what to ask. And that's what I was trying to convey, and what was trying to convey when I first started doing those workshops, is that sometimes you don't even know what to ask. You don't even know where you're going to go with it. And so having those openings, and so the reflective responses helps you with the sentence starters, as you were saying. And that's also what the graphic organizers do. There's bar graphs and pie graphs, and they give you different aspects of things to decide how important they are in your life or not, what you want to explore. And you might say, oh, I never even thought that I would have to consider artifacts or photographs. Do I have to keep them up from the past? Do I take them down? How do I feel about that? Is that an emotional trigger for me? Is that traumatizing? And to really look at things you may not think of. And finding out your comfort level without necessarily having to share everything with the other person, which I can say sometimes there is an urge to do that. And everybody makes mistakes along the way with this. And I call them learning lessons, not really, I mean, I use the word mistakes, but they're part of the journey. They're part of everybody's journey. And then we pick ourselves up, we say, sorry, I didn't mean that, I'm learning too. And I also talk about that in the Vital Vignettes, how there's a duality for every person who's in the life of a person who's transitioning, whether you're a partner, a parent, a family member, or an educator, where you may be processing things for yourself, being asked to also teach at the same time, and you may not know the answers, and it could be very hard to defend something and then be angry at it at the same time, and allowing that space of that duality, and not judging yourself, and hoping no one else will judge you, but if they do, having knowing that you're not alone, that could happen, and that it's okay not to know the answer. If somebody asks a question and you're in the middle of processing, you say, I'll get back to you on that. I'm not really quite sure, but for today, this is how I feel, and I have the right to change my mind about that.
I think that's so important what you're saying right now, Dee. I was just taking notes. And it reminds me too of one time when I was in an event with patients of facial teams, and I asked somebody, so do you have any more questions? As I usually do, it's a sort of a typical, helpful thing to ask, but they said, I don't know what the questions are. And so this kind of workbook is so important because you're giving people the questions to ask themselves, and that's getting them started from there, at least. And then from there, that'll lead to their own questions eventually, won't it? And what you were just commenting about, the duality, and giving people the terminology that is helpful to use without, so that nobody feels hurt or offended, using a way of communicating, like saying, I'm sorry, I'm learning too along the process, so let me look into that kind of thing. I think that's really, really important too, because a lot of people just don't know what to say. They don't know what to say, right?
Yes, and so it's again, you bring up the greatest topic. So one of the chapters in the first book and the second book, and then I did it a little differently in the third book, is the vocabulary. Because you were right. I think the title is titled, It Could Be a Foreign Language. And really, I'm still trying to master English, so. And so there is there is a lot of vocabulary, there are a lot of terms, and they're ever evolving. Some of the definitions of the glossary that I put in, I wrote a glossary with asking people that are professionals, have evolved even from the first workbook to the third workbook. And every time I revisited it, sometimes I was working on two at the same time, so I was able to align them, but then at the last moment, one went to press, and then the third one, I had to end up switching some vocabulary. Even people understanding that I didn't understand this at the beginning. There's a lot of things I didn't know while I was researching and learning things, is that they is a singular pronoun. And I give examples on how to, especially for educators, on how to actually ask certain questions using they in all different ways, so that a person can practice and have a script and understand different things, how queer has evolved over decades, and different things, all different types of vocabulary. So I do that, but because I'm a teacher, I presented all the way to learn it through games and play. And so I created crossword puzzles and word searches and different kinds of games I made up myself, because I think I'm deep down want to be a game maker, as I found out. And so I explained all the rules, and you can play these alone or with others. And for the parent book, you can do it with your child, or with a partner, you can do it with a partner, or with your friends, because a lot of people's friends want to support the community or other family members, and so they don't know how to do it. And nobody wants to appear ignorant, and but they don't want to do, a person doesn't want to do harm either. And sometimes when people say inappropriate things or ask inappropriate questions, it's more of not knowing what's appropriate. And I usually say, when a person's going to ask a question of somebody, I say, put yourself in that person's shoes. Would you want them to ask you that about your relationship? Do you think it's appropriate to ask somebody what their partner's genitalia looks like? Or is it all right to ask that about a child? Would you ask that of anybody? Certainly not in a school setting. And maybe if you're a nurse or a medical health professional, you may need to know something if a child had an infection or something. But otherwise, some questions are inappropriate. And so I think if a person really gets into the mindset of because there's a whole section in the books called the empathy embracing exercises, to put yourself in the mind or the mindset of compassion and understanding of the person who's in transition. And understanding, one question has to do with gender dysphoria, and understanding what gender dysphoria is and how it would be if that was occurring to you. And a person who is not experiencing gender dysphoria could never really understand the depth that is. After talking to many people who are in transition, I don't think I could truly understand, but there are aspects I could. And so again, there's an empathy part that in every one of the books, in every chapter, that allows you to be compassionate and in the mindset of somebody who's going through the transition themselves. And you walk a mile in someone's shoes. The expressions. My expressions always go in all different directions, but you understand the point.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's very important to try and be empathetic and see things in a more sympathetic, compassionate way. And I think it's fantastic your books include that, because I think that's definitely part of the journey.
Yes. But when you speak about the journey, one of the things that I also think is necessary is self-help for yourself and keeping the focus on yourself. And there's a section on that has to do with really focusing on your own needs and ways to nurture yourself. And I give examples of, I suggest maybe taking a date, make a date, getting to know yourself date. And when a person is a parent, a partner, a family member, and even teachers, when they're processing this, you may need like a quiet place, or you may need to actually, I say, even go to concerts. Well, when we can go to concerts again. And, or, when I was reading things over, especially with the third book, I realized some of these things right now you can do, and some things we have to wait to do them. But it's or partners, when they go out, to go on a date with each other, where the topic that's most important to them is not just the transition. So I think of parents when they say they just had a baby and they're a couple and all they ever do is talk about the baby. When they go out on dates, that's all they think about. And they're like, no, we have to, there is some other topic we can discuss. And I think that it's very healthy to find that, do this here with couples or with a parent with their child, that it's not always trying to figure out learning something new or talking about the potential of surgery or the social transition, medical transition, how you're going to, sometimes the people have conversations about who are we going to tell next, how are we going to tell them, and it becomes really exhausting, and there's no space for just the relationship, the laughter, and not just the figuring out. Of course, with the celebrations, which there are many and tons, which I always love to get to, there is grief sometimes for some people and some partners and some parents and some family members, and for a person who's in transition. I know, like, one of the Venn diagrams in all the books, it's where you have like two circles and then there's a section, the commonality. And I used to think that the person who's in transition was always joyful about this, and never really, I didn't know. I have to be honest, and that every moment was filled with celebration. But sometimes there are losses that they themselves have experienced. They might not have been able to go to a prom when they were younger, in their affirmed gender, and there's a loss there. And then I know one partner talked to me about how they let, when their partner, while their partner was just early on in their transition, they let them carry their books from their house, from a school to the house, and gave them that experience. And I think it's beautiful to have opportunities that to mend any of the pain or the hurt, but also keep a space for if a person is grieving. And some people do not grieve. I did a lot of research on grief and read many books. I talk about them there's a whole resource section in the book for children's literature, camps, ideas, great books that are out there. There are resources in there with blogs. There are resources about different YouTube clips, podcasts, everything you can think of, magazine articles, TV shows, movies, and it gives you, but again, just like the vocabulary, this is ever evolving, so that you don't really, something may be outdated within a year, within 10 years, so that I think to stay current, I write at the end when I tell people they can get in touch with me, that if you find something new, let me know, and then I'll put it in the next workbook that I do. Because I want to stay current, and it's impossible for one person to know everything, and I certainly don't.
And there's resources, new resources are coming out now a lot more frequently than in the past. So there's new things are coming out, especially in terms of documentaries and novels on the topic are ever more present in our literature. So there's a few more comments here from our viewers, Dee. So I just want to go through them. Sophie says here that she would encourage all gender identity clinics and any professional resources or support services for trans people to obtain multiple copies of these workbooks and to have them on hand for the people that might need them. And someone here says, we highly recommend all these books and DM's workshops. And they fill a unique need in the community, which is true. And again, I have no one favorite part, because I asked while you were talking, I asked, for those who have experience with the workbooks, what was their favorite part? And so Sophie says she doesn't have a favorite part, but there were parts of the book that were more relevant depending on the part of the journey that they were in.
Yes,
so
and that was intentional. I'm glad that's recognized, that I say that throughout the book. Come back. Maybe you want to skip this. Maybe you're in a different place, because the books are meant to meet you where you are at that time. And there are people that have a lot of experience, and then they may need to address maybe just one section or one topic. There's a part for partners about sex and intimacy, and I've had the opportunity to read other chapters in books and other articles about sex and intimacy between partners and how it will evolve over time and can evolve over time. And I've also written extensively about grief and helping that path, as I mentioned before. And so there are different people that jump back and forth with the book, and I always see people with Post-its in it, and they might write and ask me a question. And even someone recently asked me about, finding a therapist. Of course, I just give them other resources that I knew, and it's up to the person. But because there's a word called gatekeeping that I learned through my journey here, and that some people, a lot of things that are medical are very well monitored and for safety's sake. But there's also a fine line when it's not just for safety's sake. And so the book goes over some of that. And so, but that person who wrote in just said, it is true that you revisit different things. And so, you know, some people talked about the gatekeeper part to me that I didn't really know when I started this research, and also talking to people about that aspect. And then another part that people talk about is that when they talk about the grief about acceptance, and that something else I learned is that I always used to think that acceptance meant rah, rah, you're all excited, everything's great. But it doesn't have to mean that. It means I know this is going to happen, and how can I best approach and be of help? And if I can't, who can I contact to take my place if I can't? Because I don't think, even in with teachers, when I present with teachers and for administrators, everyone is not going to be on board. Everyone is not going to agree with every part. But so then start with the teachers that really are on board, that really can. I mean, doing something it seems people sometimes think of it as an obstacle, but to me it seems so simple. Call a person by the name that is appropriate for them. I'm sorry, I get like a little, you know, use the pronoun. It can save a person's life. Use the pronouns, learn how to do it. If you say it wrong, it's okay. I've said the pronoun wrong for people. Sometimes a person's the pronoun that feels best for them, that is their pronoun, evolves. They may say, this is the pronoun I need, that feels right for me now. And now this is the pronoun that really I need to, please adjust to this. And we do this all the time. When a person gets married, sometimes they take another person's name, right? And we all learn to call them by the new name. So, you know, that's in one of my empathy things. I talk about that. And different things like that. So that I think that we all have a learning curve, but that it's very important that we remember that there are simple things a person can do to be supportive. And if you can't, and that's through the acceptance. I have one parent who shared about when they accepted, and they're a parent now that we became an advocate. I mean, an amazing human being. And what they did, they happened to celebrate, it's a Christmas, you know, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, there's all different holidays going on now, and for those that celebrate. And for Christmas, what they did was all the ornaments that had the child's name that was assigned at birth, they got them all changed to the affirmed name. And so all the ornaments are changed for that child. And that when they came down and the tree was made, and I mean, I cry. I think it's one of the most moving things I have ever experienced hearing a story, and the joy on the child's face to see that. And I say child, but you know, this child's in high school because to me it's a child.
Small gesture that means so much.
Yes, and it's simple. It's simple. Yeah. It's a simple gesture, but it could be very long and hard and painful for a parent to get there. Yeah. And that a parent has to be allowed that space to process that. And that if a parent can't get there, then maybe somebody else can do that on their tree. Or maybe their child can have that. I don't know, I'm focusing on trees. I do love Christmas trees, even though I'm not part of my background. And that and they can have one in their room. And there's all ways to show support. And that the books help you, lead you to figure out what that is for yourself. It helps guide you. And everyone's response is okay. And it as long as it takes. I've known families that they were getting a divorce and their child transitioned, and they stayed together until their child transitioned. I know other families that it was very hard for one parent to accept their child transitioning. And so one parent said, I will have to leave my partner, my spouse. I will have to, because I need to be there for my child. Where another one said, no, we can work this out. Let's go to therapy. Let's figure it out. Or I can be the support for our child now. And when you are ready, when and if you're ready, come join us. You know, we love you. We want you to be part of this. And then there are some people, partners that do need to leave for their own, for their own future. For them, they found that they could not be attracted to their partner once they transitioned. And that's often a very painful place for everyone. And I feel sad about that, but I understand and I respect that decision. And and everybody in that situation needs a lot of support too. But there needs to be space for that. And I've known people to end and come back. Sometimes they become back as friends. Sometimes they work out different configurations for their relationship, and that is acceptable to both parties. But there's a communication corner in the book that asks questions that the people answer separately, the person who's in transition and then somebody in their life that they're trying to have support them or to understand the journey. And so the partner is the person who takes the lead, or the parent takes the lead, that says, I'm ready to talk to you about this, but you can answer this separately. And for children, I have them, because as I'm a teacher, they can draw their response. They don't have to use words. And adults are often wonderful artists. They draw, there's spaces for this, that you don't just have to use words, and that every way that a person can convey a feeling or a message, there's space for that in the workbooks.
That's what I was thinking when you told the story about the Christmas tree and changing the names on the balls. That says so much without having to say it in words, right? Which is sometimes difficult for human beings to express ourselves with words, but that said it all without having to really say anything.
That's why it always moves me when it's beautiful.
So there were a couple more comments here. And
I love this part.
Well, our life together is more about going back a little bit to something you were commenting before. Sophie says, our life together is about more than just my partner's transition. There is so much focus and energy on the transition that the partners can get a little lost along the way. So that's a way that your workbooks have helped. And another, Jerry says, I felt great sadness when my spouse turned her back on me and asked me to move out. If we had been together for 30 years, after being together for 30 years, we'd been apart for 15 years now, there is still love and caring between us. So the workbook helped, even though it's not always about, like you were saying, a Disney ending. And reality is much more diverse, and there's other shades of happiness, aren't there? It's not just
right. And then I can also say that it's people have been there for their partners, and they find a way maybe to support the the way I can explain this best is sometimes with medical stuff, right? That the partners or parents or family members or friends become the caretakers and the nurses in post-surgery. You probably know that from your work, I'm sure. And that it's very important to understand that maybe if a person is no longer in an intimate sexual relationship with someone, but they may know things about them from being in a relationship or being a parent, being a parent about their child, that it's really important to have them be part of that part of the journey, but to understand that the caretaker or the person who is being the person who's there after post-op stuff is scared and doesn't want to make a mistake or hurt them, or may not be comfortable with blood or certain healing things, and that it's very important to have support for the person who's being supportive. And as that person just said, and that as the other person just said, and then also where the relationships go. And this is the same thing in school for teachers to understand, and administrators, that if a child is not using the bathroom because they're not able to use the bathroom that aligns with their affirmed gender, that how a child may not go to the bathroom all day long. And I know it's not the same thing as surgery or anything, but I'm just trying to say how it can have medical effects, and that it's very important to understand that these children can not use the bathroom all day long and then like rush home and get infections and all different things, and that it's really necessary that how one of the people commented said is that understanding how others in your life can have an impact, but also need to be supported and be taught, well, why do we need to address this with bathrooms? So why do we need to address this with policy in schools? And why do we have to understand what it's like in the locker room in gym, and sleepovers and parties? And the same thing with partners is another thing that I wanted to bring up, that I was thinking, is that about the gaining a loss of privilege, and how that plays a role in certain aspects of this too. And that's addressed in the books too. How even going through, aside from that, traveling and going through the security, how that can affect based on what your gender marker is, based on what your name is, what your pronoun is, can affect going when you travel. And there's different aspects. I mean, I'm just touching on things people may, I don't know if that's clear, but sometimes when a person goes through the security, the name on their passport may not align with maybe how their body is at the moment. Yeah. And it can be a very scary moment for people. So to address all these things, and people that are with them are often with them when they're going through this, and how you have to have a plan. And so the books address some of this too. Things you wouldn't even think of if you sat for hours and hours and hours until you've experienced it, or somebody has told you they've gone through this.
Yeah. Yeah, these are all good points. And from the Facialteam point of view, I just like to comment that there on two things regarding the partner for an FFS patient. So it'd be interesting to have your books here as well, because we get a lot of people coming with their partners, their parents, and two things happen. First, we notice, that people need support. A lot of support, not just the patient. So we have a psychologist on our staff who's available not just for the patient, but also for the companion who has come with them. And what we've noticed too along the way is that sometimes it's the companion, the partner or the parent, that needs more time with the person we have to provide guidance in these moments, which can be really intense. Your loved one is in the operating theater for hours and hours, and there's things come out, right? And so sometimes Marina spends more time with the loved one than with the patient themselves. So that's I think very, very important to make note of. So people going through different medical procedures, and the people that are there to be with them on that journey. It's more than just the patient who needs attention.
I think it's a great point that you have this. I think it's very necessary. I think it's very important to include partners, and even for parents whose child is over the age of 18, legal age, to have someone to have their questions answered also, and to allow them to be part of the journey of that aspect. But again, some people don't want to be part of it. Some people do. Some people don't want other people to be part of it. And this has to be communicated. And I want to say that when you were just talking about, sitting in and waiting for people talk about this all the time, sitting in that waiting room, if anybody's experienced anybody going through any type of surgery, and sometimes these surgeries take a long time. There's multiple surgeries in certain cases.
You don't know how they're going to be when they come out. And then the healing time afterwards can be quite stressful.
Yes, and especially if it involves anything that involves something sexual, that there may be a time when that part of a person's relationship aspect may have to be on hold for a little while people are healing, and things can't occur in certain ways. That's the way I want to say it was appropriate. But also there's the thing that I call amnesia. And what I mean, a feeling of amnesia is that sometimes a partner or child, even a student, will look very different, even even do when social transition is occurring, not just medical. And so a person may be dressing differently, having their hair differently, wearing makeup, not wearing makeup, maybe holding their body in a different way. And you may go somewhere and be looking for the person you once, how their visual cues were, and they may, especially after FFS, right? You may not look like that, and you're looking in a crowd and thinking, you know, oh wait, that person, the person I love, that I've been intimate with, or that I gave birth to, is going to look a lot differently when I'm looking for them in a crowd. And you feel like, almost like amnesia, like, oh, I forgot what they look like. Or describing someone to somebody, sometimes it changes. And so I think that there's an adjustment period. When you say the partner needs to talk, it seems understandable to me that when a person, after they have the reveal of how things may look differently after FFS or any type of other surgery, that you become familiar with it. You get to know that aspect of that person again, and learn how to embrace it, and you talk about it, and you may even have to touch a person's face or other parts of their body. You may have to, it may be important to go clothes shopping with them. And that, I think that and sometimes there's grief that's involved with that, and celebration, and both at the same time. And that it's very important to have a space to ask your questions and reflect on them. And again, I always have to work on this, is not to say everything that you're thinking in your head, and to write it down and journal and put it down in writing, and have a safe place, and decide exactly how much you want to reveal or tap into, and maybe undo and say, I'm sorry if I did share too much or say something, and it's all part of this. You have to be humble with this. You have to be humble.
Those are some great pearls there to sort of
You always call my pearls, right?
What we've been talking about. And I just posted in the chat for any of you who are listening and want to get more information about the Pearls of Wisdom by D M Maynard, and check out her blog site here, which is maynardswisdom.com. And Dee, it's been so nice chatting with you. We've been going now for an hour.
Oh, wow.
So I'm very conscious that you have other obligations
Thank you.
Today. So I'd just like to say thank you. And if you could summarize, I don't know if you want to summarize anything else up in one sentence before we close.
Just that everybody's needs and wants matter and important, and everybody's voice needs to be heard. There are resources out there. You're not alone. There are different ways, conferences, many things in the resources I explain. There's ways to learn the vocabulary. Feel free, you can get the books on many major websites, or different ways. Bookstores, they, especially the independent bookstores, need our support now more than ever. And if you can't leave your home, it can be delivered to you in different ways. And if you want to get in touch with me, I think, Lil, you're putting stuff up, right?
About I'm putting the links into the book.
Workshops, questions, I will get back to you as quickly and as best as I can. The more the merrier. If you're interested in workshops, I do them for parents, for partners, for family members, for educators. In school districts, I can do them online or in person when we're allowed to do that again. And I thank you again for this opportunity. And please know you're not alone. That's my biggest thing, is you're not alone, and you don't, and it's a learning curve. Be kind to yourself, and make space for yourself and your own self-care and your own needs. Is there anything else about the upcoming monthly workshops? The monthly?
Yes. First, I'm gonna put in.
I just remembered. I'm so excited about this.
And we're gonna mention that now. So yeah, I'm just putting in the links to the 3 books, and everybody remember to keep an eye out for Dee's new book coming out in January
21st.
Yes, I can't believe that it was only last year, really, Dee, when we met.
Yes.
your book signings at the Philly Trans Wellness Conference in
And
Philadelphia.
I adored you right away. You were the warmest person. It was so easy to talk to you.
And when we met and we took photos, and we didn't realize that we were having dinner together that evening, thanks to mutual contact, Christy Block. Shout out to Christy.
Great voice therapist. Look her up.
New York Speech and Voice Lab.
Yes.
And yeah, so all the links there for the 3 books there to Amazon. And yes, now I want to announce for everybody, educating listeners about their journeys. Self-help and education series with D M Maynard will be beginning on the 27th of January. I'm so excited about this. We're going to do some monthly live streams featuring the voices of partners in January, and thereafter we'll speak with more partners, parents, and other educators of people who are in transition. So there's so many journeys that we want to show and talk about and that need to have a voice. So the monthly series will bring diverse perspectives to the forefront. In the meantime, as I mentioned at the beginning, I posted a link to Dee's guest blog on our own website, so please check that out. That's a little bit more information specifically about the first book for partners. So thanks, everybody. We've had a very consistent viewership here today. Thank you so much for coming and listening in. We hope this has been fantastic. Everybody's saying thanks in the comments, Dee. I know you can't see them. So here's a good one. DM's compassion, understanding, care, and respect for all people are evident in her workbooks. Her desire to educate, help, and support all people make her workbooks invaluable.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. That's so sweet. I don't even know what to say, so thank you.
So with that, we'll close the comments, and viewers, just want to say thank you so much again, Dee. Thanks for all the viewers, and everybody, please click follow on our channel, like this video, and share. The button's right down there. That big red one, click on it. And we also want to give your transgender, non-binary, or gender questioning loved ones a big hug today.
And I just want to thank all the healthcare workers out there that are helping keep everybody safe, and those in the military, and everybody that's out there helping make our world a better world and a more inclusive world too, that really is there to support others and in all their journeys in life. That's all.
Thank you, Dee. And this is my last live stream of the year. So yeah.
So I'm so honored. What a great way to be able to do a tribute to you and all your hard work, and how much you really embrace the trans community. It's really beautiful, and who you are really makes a difference, and it makes it very comfortable to speak to you. So thank you for your time too.
Thank you very much, Dee.
And I'll see you on January 27th.
Yes. And
2021.
In 2021, but before, on the 13th, I will be having a live stream with my colleagues, psychologist Marina and patient coordinator Bea, and we'll be talking about some of the most frequently asked questions from their point of view, from our FFS patients. So please join our patient peer group on Facebook. It's a great community of over 3,000 people who are in the journey right now and just beginning, people who have already been through it, that are there providing advice and telling and sharing their stories. We have a great mentorship program there. We've got quite a few volunteers of former FFS patients who are offering themselves as mentors for people who are just beginning. So join us on our Facebook peer group, and also sign up for our newsletter. I'm just going to put the link down here, the last link here. And thank you, everybody, for everything, for being here. Thank you. And happy Yuletide season. And remember, your healthcare and happiness matter. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.